Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is Friday night, March 12th, 9:30 p.m. Calgary, Alberta time, and I'm just happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us, and yeah, this is great. We're on for 30 minutes. This is a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and I have my chat room up and working, and I don't have anything typed in there or anything, but you're more than welcome to come and sit in the chat room if you like. And I have a guest call-in number, but I haven't been taking any phone calls lately just because I had some people phoning in with pranks and stuff that are just so rude, and we just don't have time for that. So if you want to be on the show, make sure that you get a hold of me, via email or somehow, so that I know you want to be on the show, and you can give me your number, and then I'll know it's you on the line, and I can bring you on the air, because I certainly welcome everybody to the show. And we're looking at a Survivor to Thriver workbook that I found on Adult Survivors of Child Abuse website. That is the www.ascasupport.org, and it's a Morris Center program. Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. They have all kinds of peer-based, web-based and group support in different cities throughout North America. And I guess you can just check in your phone books or just go on the website and check and see if there is one in your area if you're interested in actually checking that out. I looked to see if there was one in my city, and there isn't, but it would be kind of interesting to see just what kind of support they can actually give us, right? But they do have online support as well, web-based, as well as group type support and stuff like that. So it's a great website. I highly recommend it. But that's where I got this Survivor to Thriver workbook. And they did say that people are welcome to use it as long as they credit the ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, and also a Morris Center program, and that it is really for everyone. They just really stress and they want to make sure everybody is in a safe place when they're doing the workbook. So the first 34 pages were covering safety first. And that's are you safe enough to are you far along enough in your healing to actually go through the workbook? So on this show, this is not a professional show, and I don't hold any professional certificates or counseling or therapist certificates. I highly recommend professional therapy. This is not to replace professional therapy. I am a survivor who's walking out my own healing, but I also like to bring information to other people that I find, that's helpful. And, listen at your own discretion, please. And, we have to know where we're at in our healing and what's good for us to listen to. So that's why I always promote, the fact that people should really, if it's a topic that it's going to bother you and you just feel I'm not going to be comfortable with that, make sure you turn the show off, because I seriously would not be offended. Everybody should be in a safe place when they're listening to this stuff. And I know, I've come a long way in my healing process, and I'm able to, I don't mind talking about child abuse, and I've been dealing with it my whole life, and so it doesn't bother me. But I know so many people are really bothered by the topic of child abuse. So that's what I cover, everything regarding child abuse, all the issues surrounding it, and human rights abuses as well. Child rights are human rights, and so it is very linked, and it's very much part of of the big whole picture of human rights abuses, right? And so it's just so important that we all know what we can listen to. So if you think the show will bother you, just turn it off. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I really highly suggest you get permission to listen to the show from a caregiver, a parent, or someone who has a good head on their shoulders, who can listen to this with you, right? And that way, because I believe in online safety for children, I fight for children's rights, I fight for online safety for children, and I just think it's so important that young people make sure that it's safe for them to listen to, and that what they're looking at online and who they're talking to is someone that their parent knows about, and or if you don't have a parent, which is sadly the case in so many children's lives, if you have someone in your family, like a family member or a neighbor, perhaps someone who you really trust, a school counselor, a teacher, someone who can listen to the show with you, and then you can always listen on archive, and they can let you know whether or not you should be listening to it, because I don't know where the players are nowadays. So that's why it's really important that everybody just be in a safe place. So yeah, I'm happy you can join me. We got about 25 minutes left, and I missed my show Wednesday night. I'm sorry, I was really tired, and I was really feeling quite under the weather, really. And I laid down for a nap, and I ended up falling asleep and missed my show, so I'm really sorry about that. Monday night, we were looking at the issues of surrounding sexual problems, regarding adult survivor issues and stuff, and so we won't cover any of that because we did go through that. But right now, we're actually going to look at symptoms of trauma, and this is page 55 on the Survivor to Thriver workbook, and that's www.ascasupport.org. If you want to go there and pull up this Survivor to Thriver workbook, you can join me and sort of follow along here, and it's page 55. And it's called Symptoms of Trauma. So that's what we're going to look at. And I'm just going to read right from the page, and I'll probably add my own stuff in there too, just because I experienced a lot of trauma in my life, different kinds of trauma. And I know it's really hard on people, and I know so many people experience trauma, not just people who are, survivors or victims of child abuse. People they go in to explain this, so we're going to read this right now. Symptoms of trauma. Psychic trauma is a psychological condition caused by overwhelming stress that cannot be controlled by normal coping mechanisms. It can result from a number of situations in addition to child abuse, including war or battlefront experience, natural disasters, being held hostage, and being in the middle of a bombing, hijacking, or shootout. Perhaps the most common symptoms of such traumatic exposure is panic attacks involving hyperventilation and severe anxiety. And these can be triggered by anything your symptoms associate with your past abuse: insomnia, sleepwalking, nightmares, and night terrors, a more extreme type of nightmare occurring during non-dreaming sleep cycles, or other signs of unresolved trauma of some sort. It says many adult survivors don't show signs of psychic trauma until years after the abuse ends. When they do show signs, survivors often report feelings of extreme anxiety, panic, general fearfulness, and disorientation. In the most extreme cases, survivors may evidence disassociation, splitting of mind and body, numbing of the body, and intrusive, repetitive thoughts and flashbacks to the abuse episodes. The appearance of these symptoms lets you know that your psyche is still trying to resolve conflicts associated with your past abuse. There is growing evidence that survivors of extreme and prolonged child abuse are susceptible to developing multiple personalities as a means of self-protection, and that child abuse may be the major cause of multiple personality disorders. So that's what they've written here. And I know even myself, I have a lot of repetitive thoughts and flashbacks to the abuse that I suffered. And it's hard because during the day while I'm working and stuff, it just goes through my mind. It plays like a movie all the time, and I can't really shut it off. It's not something I can just shut down. It just goes all the time, and I can still work and I can function quite well, but in the back of it's always there. So I know that that's a problem that I probably should have some therapy and talk to a counselor and find out if there's a way to actually learn how to cope, and I'm coping quite well with it, I think, but just to learn how to maybe get some of that to subside, And there's so many people that are suffering from this kind of stuff, and it's horrible, absolutely horrible, and depending on the degree and the severity of the abuse the child suffers, that just makes it all that much worse for a lot of people out there who were abused as children. And so it is very it varies, and everyone's different, so that's why all the what might work for me might not work for you, and vice versa, right? What might work for you might not work for me, just depending on a lot of different reasons and issues, right? And so but it's just important that we keep reaching out and just keep looking for that help, right? I just can't say it enough. It says, when any signs of trauma are noticed, the best suggestion is to get immediate help. Turn to members of your support network, trusted family and friends, and your therapist if you have one. If you experience any of the more severe trauma symptoms, such as disassociation, we strongly encourage you to seek professional help. If you feel totally unable to function, you may need medication or hospitalization to control the anxiety. The goal during this time is to make sure you are safe and protected and to minimize the possibility of hurting yourself. And so that's really important, that, like they say here, to get help. Make sure you reach out and get help. And if you're having disassociation and stuff like that, where your mind splits from your body, they encourage everyone to seek professional help. And I do too. I think it's so important, right? We want to be safe, and we deserve a good life, and we deserve to have a decent, good life. So whatever we have to do to get it, whatever kind of help is out there available, we should be reaching out for it, because there's no stigma attached to it, not like there used to be, And nowadays people, who cares what people think, right? I mean, our health and safety and well-being is way more important than what somebody would think about us for going to see a counselor or a therapist. And back in the old days, I think there was a lot of stigma surrounding that. But now there's more of a stigma if you don't. People are like, why don't you just go get some help? And it's so true, right? The help is available, and if the one counselor or therapist just doesn't seem to be working, then we just move on to another one. That's what I think. If you find one who's just not working for you, and that's what I know that's what I would do in my case. I'd just, if it wasn't right, I'd just be like, okay, well, this is not working, so I'm going to move on to another one, see if I can find one that's really understands what I'm going through and wants to really be part of my healing process. So it's so important. And they have journal questions in this workbook, and they ask quite a few questions regarding this actual particular topic of trauma. And the question 61 is, do you have frequent panic attacks? Question 62, do you have trouble sleeping or experiencing terrifying nightmares or sleepwalking? Question 63 is, do you have sudden flashbacks or images or thoughts that are connected to the abuse? And 64, do you sometimes feel like you are somebody else? And 65, do you have partial amnesia or blackouts? And 66, do you fantasize a lot or feel disconnected from your body? And 67, do you have overwhelming anxiety that seems connected to a particular situation or stage of your life? And 68, do you have trouble concentrating or remembering? And 69, do you have periods of overwhelming grief or terror? And question 70, do you often feel agitated and ill at ease? So those are some of the questions we can ask. We can ask ourselves and answer. And they did suggest in this book that people go through this book with a friend, really like a trusted friend who's been there for you, who wants to help you and make and see you kind of work through and really heal, a really good friend, and or a group, therapy session is really the best. I think they said they really think it should be done with someone, especially if you're just not far along in your healing process, right? Because these kind of things, can cause us to think about the abuse, and then which in turn, might really cause us to feel down, and we should have someone with us when we're doing this stuff. I know myself, I made it through the worst of it on my own, and so I know that I'm okay to do this workbook. I don't think I'll have any problems with it, but that doesn't mean that somebody else might not. And so it's really important to make sure that, if you're going to go through the workbook, they stressed it in pages 1 through 34, safety first, to make sure that we're in a good place before we begin this workbook. So this isn't even the beginning of the workbook. This is just the beginning part of it, just to go over the different things and the different topics and issues surrounding abuse and adult survivor issues. And then later on is the actual workbook. It's 115 pages long, and we're just on page 57 right now. So I don't know if I'll read the whole thing, but I just wanted to go through and cover the beginning part of it, just because I found it very helpful for myself too, right? And so I'll just continue on here. The next part of this article is called Physical Ailments. And adult survivors of physical and sexual abuse frequently complain of a host of illnesses and psychosomatic problems during their adult lives. It says the most common generalized effects include stomach problems, difficulty in breathing, muscular tension and pain, migraine headaches, incontinence, and heightened susceptibility to illness and infection. In addition, skin disorders, back pain, ulcers, and asthma are common ailments that are stress-related and may signify unresolved childhood abuse issues. So that's quite interesting, I think. In cases of sexual abuse, the breasts, buttocks, and different parts of the body, I'm not going to read all of that there, might be the site of discomfort, chronic pain, and otherwise unsubstantiated sensations. It says, and you can go on and read this, quite graphic, so I'm not going to read this part out. You can go back, you can go on the website, www.ascasupport.org, and read a lot of that. If you're really interested in finding out more about that part of it, physical ailments to do with child sexual abuse. It's very graphic and detailed, and so I'm not going to read that on the air. But they're just talking about the fact that there are lots of physical ailments in regards to abuse of all kinds, whether it's physical abuse or sexual abuse. And, they have noticed over the years that there's a lot of problems that are related, but it says that not all problems. It says, again, we remind you that any or all of these problems may be caused by non-abuse related factors or conditions as well. So they don't, it might not be abuse, but it could be something else that, a person, just because we experience these things might not mean that we're abused, in other words, right? And so it says, all right, let's continue on here. Depending on one's childhood experience and type of personality, illness can have different meanings for the survivor. Being sick can offer an opportunity to be taken care of either by yourself or someone else. For some survivors, the best care they ever received from their parents may have been when they were sick. Being sick may be one of the few instances in which survivors will care for themselves. In many cases, however, illness may be the body's message that all is not well emotionally. When strong feelings are repressed, the unexpressed psychic energy can cross the mind-body threshold and establish its presence in the form of bodily symptoms and illness. And I know, like in my family, my mom wasn't very good at being very compassionate, and so like when I was sick and stuff, she was really not all that kind. Let's just put it that way. I remember one time I was throwing up at night, and I was throwing up in my bed, and I thought I was just choking, and I realized I had thrown up all over the place. It was terrible. I was really sick, and my mom, because I woke her up, got really angry and made me sleep in it. So I had to sleep all night in my own throw up, and I was so sick, and I was just young. I was probably about 11 years old, and actually I think I was more like 12, because I remember the house that we lived in, and it was just horrible. And so when I was sick, I never really bothered to tell her, because it didn't really seem to matter if I was sick, because she was sick all the time. So she was more concerned for her own health than she was for ours, And another time I fell on my nephew pulled a chair out from under me really, when I was going to go sit down outside in a backyard barbecue, and I fell on a root and then couldn't stand up, and I was in so much pain, and I couldn't walk for like 3 days. But my dad just took me home, put me on the couch, and they just left. My dad just went back to the barbecue, and they just left me on the couch. And so there wasn't a whole lot of mercy and compassion shown in our home, and it's unfortunate. My sister got one time had her eye kind of almost poked out by a piece of metal, a metal fence, and my mom wouldn't take her to the doctor, and the neighbors were even pissed off, because the neighbors were like, "You need to take her to the doctor," and my mom wouldn't take her. And I think it's because they already had social workers in on their case for child abuse, and I think they just thought, if we can't have any more, even though it wasn't abuse related, they figured that we would be taken away, so that's why they didn't do that. So they never really got us any help. I never saw, after I was born and came out of the hospital, didn't see any doctors, or I went for my shots and all that. I'm sure I had all my shots and everything, but most kids, when they're sick, their parents take them to the doctor and stuff, and ours just didn't. So it's hard to learn to care for yourself as an adult when you're not cared for as a child, right? And especially when you're mistreated and beaten on and just bloody noses and nobody cares, right? You just learn to deal with the pain. You learn to deal with the abuse, and you just learn to live with it. I had to learn to live with the pain, and then I had a really bad car accident, and so I was in pain just all the time. And so my whole life has really been all about pain, and so it's hard on people. It really is, and I'm sure it's taken some years off my life, and but I'm still fighting, that good fight to just keep going and to learn how to take care of myself. That's the whole thing. And over the years, I have gotten better. I still have some work to do, and on making sure that I do take care of myself. But I definitely do work a little harder at it now than I used to, because I used to really try to destroy myself when I was a teenager, doing drugs and stuff like that. I didn't care it didn't matter to me if I did so many drugs I'd overdose, or, I would just do them, and I wouldn't care about the consequences, right? And, I used to do a lot of heavy-duty drugs, and lots of, acid and LSD and, mushrooms, and, my mind, it would be gone for days. And sometimes I'd be wondering if I was ever going to be kind of coming back to like a normal feeling, and I was probably only I was in between the ages of like 12 and 17, 18 years old. And then after that, I started using other drugs, I did lots of different kinds of drugs. So it's just crazy what abuse does to people. My parents abused me, so then I thought, hey, I'll just finish the job. I'll just finish the job and do some more damage, right? That was my mentality, and that's horrible, and that's what happens to a lot of people. And it's sad. Like, I finally realized that I didn't want to I wanted to go on, and as at the age of 21, I thought, man, I want to live like a normal person for once in my life, and do normal things, and I mean, I had gone on trips and stuff before, and I had done some normal things, but I wanted to do that on my own with my own accord, and to start working on my adult life. So when I hit 21, my brother had committed suicide. And I thought, man, I really want to live. I don't want to be ending up in the streets, a drug addict, and who knows, dead. Just all this stuff started going through my mind of where I was headed. I was just headed in the wrong direction. And this is what happens to many, many, many abuse survivors. And so it's just horrible. And we have to do all we can really to stop child abuse. So that's the whole issue. That's why this show is all about child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention, because had my parents gotten the proper help for themselves and for us, I can imagine that most of that stuff wouldn't have happened, because I didn't start out wanting to hurt myself. I didn't start out wanting to not knowing how to take care of myself. That was all learned behavior, and what we learned from our parents, or our caregivers, is what we take with us into adulthood. And unless you get some help and learn how to deal with this stuff, and learn how to cope properly, learn problem-solving skills. We were talking about that this morning on my one child abuse survivor to another, problem-solving skills and working through crisis, and just really learning how to be a fully functioning adult. It's hard enough for people who are fully functioning adults, and they have their own set of problems too, which is just normal life. Life throws things at us that we just, it's stressful, right? But as long as when you have that, the normal coping mechanisms built into your psyche, and you know how to cope with things, and how to problem solve, and how not to hurt yourself and do terrible things and go off the deep end, life can be so much better, right? Because we know problems will be there. Problems will always be there. But it's a matter of learning how to cope with them and how to deal with them and put them in their proper place a lot of times. Because if you grow up abused, a lot of times, if you have too many things kind of go wrong in your adult life, you start you almost revert back to the old panic mode of being a child in an abusive home, and it's just like being in the same old situation. Then all of a sudden you're down, and then it's like, oh, well, this is no good, it's not working. So that's why it's so important, really, that we all learn how to and find that help, to show us how to cope, how to really to take control of what we can take control of in our lives, and then not worry about the rest. I mean, there's always going to be some stuff that we just can't control, but we can control our attitudes. We can control how we treat ourselves. It's very important that we learn how to be good to ourselves. If we're not treated right as children, we need to learn how to love ourselves and how to be good to ourselves, how to treat ourselves well, because that's the only way we're going to ever make it. Honestly, I mean, it has to start with each one of us, and so we have to take a good look at what's going on in our lives and make sure that we reach out and get that help that we need, whether it's a group support or, a therapist or counselor, or just talking to some good friends who really know what you're talking about, and, just to help us along on this road, right, because it's just so very important. And, yeah, and like, these illnesses, like they're saying here, for some survivors, because of the abuse that they suffered, the emotions that are repressed and unexpressed actually take on and establish themselves in the body in the form of symptoms of illness and stuff. And I've seen that. And I'm sure that was a lot of my mom's problem, because my mom was abused as a child horribly by my grandmother. And so she was always sick. She was sick from the time, she was sick like, she had her first child when she was, I believe, 20. She was married at 18, 19 years old, had her first child at 20. And she said that she was sick back then. And then she, 18 years later, she had me, so she was 38, and she was still sick, and she had so many kids and so many problems with her body, right? So they have a bunch of questions here for that portion of it, which is physical ailments. It says, do you have a history of stomach aches or headaches? Do you have an eating disorder such as anorexia or bulimia? It says, question 73, do you have any loss of bodily functioning that cannot be accounted for by medical reasons? And 74, do you have any psychosomatic ailments such as skin disorders, asthma, or lower back pain that are not due to physical or systemic causes? 75 is, do you have a susceptibility to infectious illnesses? Question 76, do you have many health-related absences from work? Question 77, do you have constant worries about your health? And question 78, do you have significant fluctuations in your weight? And question 79, do you have frequent fatigue and body aches? And question 80, do you have negative attitudes about your body? So, yeah, it's quite interesting. Those are questions that we can ask ourselves and then kind of go through as we go through the workbook. And, yeah, you know, like, I mean, it's just crazy. Because my mom didn't show any real care or concern over me when I was sick, and really it was always all about her and stuff. I mean, I even had car accidents that I actually walked away from, and I could have got help. Like one car accident, I actually ended up in the hospital, but in other people's cars, in other friends' cars, you know, like they'd be going to the hospital, and I'd just be like, I'm just going home. You know, with a big gash on my head. You know, I mean, I just really, my life as far as I was concerned was over. Like before it even got started, I kind of felt like I was already dead at the age of 10, so I never really bothered to look after myself. And so even if I was injured, I'd just be like, I'd just continue on, because that's how I spent my youth. I mean, I spent my whole childhood really being somewhat injured, whether it was emotionally or physically. So I was so used to it, you know what I mean? So I was used to not getting the care that I needed. And so that's why as an adult, you know, if you've suffered through that, which I know so many people have, we have to reach out, make sure, and we have to be good to ourselves, and we have to make sure that when there's something going on in our body or something going on with our emotions, that we reach out and get the help that we need. You know, it's not like it was our fault. You know what I mean? We've been sort of forced into this kind of a lifestyle. So that's why it's really important to make that change. And then if you have children, you don't want to pass that on to your children, that's for sure, because it's just a vicious cycle. And so we have to be really, really careful. I don't have any children. You know, I know if I did, I'd be extra hard on myself to make sure that my child was getting the best, you know, care and love and help that they could possibly get to make it in this world. Because I tell you, I sure didn't have that. And I know so many people don't. And there's kids out there right now dying, you know what I mean, at the hands of their caregivers and parents and stuff. And if they don't die, they're going to live to, you know, to adulthood and carry all this stuff with them. And then, you know, there's just going to have to be more and more support groups out there. So that's why, you know, I just say we have to stop child abuse like now. We have to really work on finding ways to prevent child abuse and find out what's working and then build on that and find some new ideas and build on those and just really make this happen, right? I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dream Catchers for Abused Children, and I am so happy to stand with them, and I am ecstatic, you know, to be a part of this awesome, proactive organization, 501c3 not-for-profit organization who are out there making a difference in the lives of so many children. And, you know, I'm telling you, I just couldn't be happier. You want to check their website out, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, and you can find all kinds of information on there regarding child abuse, how to report it, what are the signs and symptoms, what do we need to be looking for. You have to know how to report it because you can mess up a case for a child, and, you know, we want to save children's lives, so we want to know how to report child abuse properly. There's ways to go about it, and we need to be educated on it. And there's just lots of great information on there for parents who are having a hard time coping and thinking, you know, am I abusing my child? And there's all kinds of awesome links and resources, and there's a free PDF download. It's called the Child Abuse Handbook, written by best-selling author Donna Shear and co-written with Sandra Potter, the CEO and founder. They wrote this book, and they're just giving it away for free. It's a PDF download called the Child Abuse Handbook, and there's all kinds of great information in there. I know I downloaded mine, and I was so happy to have it. And so, yeah, I highly recommend their website. And, you know, just go on there and check it out. It's very healing, and I love that website. So, yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I have so much great support from all kinds of people all around the world. Thank you so much. I have friends in Australia. I've got friends in the UK. I've got friends in Canada and the United States and everywhere else. I don't know. There's so many people that I just love and adore, and I just, you know, thank you so much for being here and being and supporting me and backing me up on this. I thank you so much for, you know, your friendship mostly, and just for hanging in there with me and being my friend. And, you know, I just wish you all the best. And you're all in my heart. And, you know, if you need something, get a hold of me, blogtalkradio.com or Facebook or just anywhere. And, you know, if there's anything I can do to just to be an ear, I'm here. And so thank you so much. Make sure you take care of yourselves and be good to yourselves. Keep the hope alive. That's the most important thing. You have to fight to live and fight to have a good life. This is what it's all about. It's all about human rights. We have a right to a good life, so make sure you fight for that good life. Don't give in and do not suffer in silence. Make sure that you get the help that you need so that you're not suffering in silence anymore, right? It's so important because silence is the problem. Education is the key, and awareness, prevention of child abuse. That's what it's all about. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I'll be on Sunday, a couple of shows. You can check my little show schedule out, but I'll be on in the morning and Sunday night, and I'll just be passing links on. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care. Have a great weekend, and until next time, we'll see you then.